Welcome to the High Voltage Live Show. I'm your host, Willie Snyder from NEC Code. I am joined by James Stalcup, the creator of the Online Academy and the best online training you can get, period.
That's
And
a fact.
we are coming to you live from the Mile High City. I am here in the Mile High City. James over there in the Longhorn State of Texas. And we're here to crush it. I hope you guys like our new graphics and our new stuff. We're just getting better every day. And we got up in the corner, we have a 9-point configuration on how to wire a motor. We're just throwing stuff up there, and it's relevant. It's really awesome. I'm having a great time doing it. I know James is having a great time doing it. We need more metal, like a little bit more metal, but we're getting there. I want to give a shout out to Mark Candel's happy birthday, brother, and Milo. Milo, happy birthday, Milo. It's really awesome that I have so many followers on NEC Code. So many people participated, and this week's myth is busting some heads. I mean, it is so awesome. I mean, there was so many people like reaching out to me and just like, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. This is right. And to me, I'm not telling you what Bill Snyder's opinion of the code languages, or what Volt Academy's opinion of the code languages. What we're telling you is what the code language says. And so that's all we can go off of. If you are out there and you think that this needs a public input and we need to fix this, that this is not worded correctly or whatever, be my guest. I mean, I thought about it hard. I don't know if anybody's heard my NEC Code podcast, but I tried to tackle this the best I could. As far as the myth is basically that the nipple rule from 2008, and 358.30 EMT shall be securely fastened and installed as a complete system in accordance with 318 and shall be securely fastened in place and supported in accordance with 358.30A and B. So that's kind of where my whole thing comes in with this, because it says must be securely fastened between termination points. So in my opinion, the only way, and this is just strictly my opinion, I don't know about James's opinion, but this is my opinion, that in order to comply with this code language, you have to install some kind of means of support, because it does not mention the connectors. It does not mention the lock rings. I mean, we install this same 30, because if you go into, I believe it's 344.30 for RMC, then you would be using lock rings instead of a connector. So that there's a reason that it tries to make it a one size fits all code to like just apply to everything. And a lot of people say, why would RMC need to be securely fastened at 36 inches? Why can't we have a 36-inch nipple? Well, because there's nothing in the code that says that that's allowed. So that right. This is kind of a tricky thing. And I really love the fact that you kind of just stayed back, James, and just kind of like let me kind of take the beating on this one. And I'm fine with it. I've been taking a beating on this one for a long time. I came out of one of my continuing education classes, and I was telling everybody, oh man, you don't have to support a conduit 3 foot anymore, And then a bunch of my buddies that are a bunch of my code people that are on all my groups are like, how do you comply with 358.30A then? If and then they're like, well, where does it say? And, if you look at the exceptions, it says, what can be increased to a distance of 5 foot where structural members do not readily permit fastening within 3 foot. Well, to me, I think that's garbage, because there's almost never that the structure won't allow. And I know it used to say structure won't allow. This is probably a newer one, but or for fishing, I mean, there's a lot of times where you have to fish the conduit down. Well, it's still technically secured by the building structure, so I mean, everyone says, "Oh, well, it's fished through a thing." I mean, we've done it before. I mean, we've taken times where we were in a hollow wall ceiling, and we just went and just pushed, EMT and just put the connectors together and pushed it all the way across like 40 feet, and then tied it into the J box, And but still, technically, it's not secured, but it's supported by that building structure.
Mhm.
So this is an interesting myth, and the myth is basically that a 36-inch raceway is a nipple. That's basically the myth. And for me, I have like a kind of a gray area in there. I will support conduit from 30 inches to about 72 inches with one support. That's kind of the way I deal with that.
Well, a nipple doesn't have anything to do with it.
Right.
You know, people say, well, there's no place in the code, there's a nipple. I've heard that before. And I
Uh,
say, well, if you've gone over and looked at chapter 9, table 1, note 4, it specifically says a nipple is 24 inches or less, and anything above 24 inches is a raceway. End of
yep.
discussion. And
Absolutely.
and that's why you have the tables over there with a 60% rule of what is considered a nipple. But besides that, looking at the language here, I finally decided, all right, I'll comment on this. And I actually did some research. And when you go in and you look at the connectors, because I've heard two different explanations on this, and they'd say, well, if you go look at the dictionary and you pick up and understand what securely fastened is, then it doesn't need to be strapped. Then the other one I would hear is, the connectors are used as a means of support. Now
Right.
let's address the connectors first. No, it didn't. When it talks about a listed connector and you go in and actually start looking at documentation, nowhere did I find that you could take and use a connector as a means of support. But what
Right.
it is, it's part of the mechanical system, and it is listed perform grounding and bonding functions. That's
Right.
what it's for. It has nothing to do with support. And I've heard people say, "Oh, well, you're just stupid going in strapping it." You know, I'm one as an inspector. If I was looking at, I may say that's okay. If it's
Right.
between two cabinets, because I don't feel it's going to move. But by code language, it has to be strapped. And
Right.
now, if I go in and look at securely fastened, I heard somebody say in one podcast, they said, "Oh, well, you got the connector that goes over the EMT." Well, let's talk about that for a second.
All right.
How many times have you seen a connector or coupling come loose? Or how many times have you seen where they try to fit something in and the EMT's barely fitting inside the connector because they're trying to shove it in there because they already got the two enclosures mounted? It's not a
Right.
full 36 to the whole
Yeah.
connector. I mean, these
Oh,
are
dude.
common things that you see.
Dude,
And
you cannot inspect a cheated coupling. You know
that's
what I
right.
mean? Or a cheated connector, rather. I'm sorry. But, one thing I want to say too that is another part of this listed uh, fittings are not required to be supported. So if you go to the supply house, you buy a 12-inch nipple that's got a UL sticker on it, that's a
Mhm.
listed nipple, that's not required to be it's required to be securely fastened. It'd be required to be made wrench tight per 110.12 a mechanical means of every connection being made wrench tight. But you can't just make that a one size fits all for everything when it's some are nipples, some are raceways. In my opinion, I
Sure.
could have that wrong, but the way I look at it, I go over there, I thread up a 30-inch piece of RMC and I throw it together with Myers hubs and I put it in there. And to me, that's a listed fitting assembly, but by code, it's not. It's not a listed fitting assembly. I could say that is, but it's not.
Yeah, I'll even take it a step further. It used to be in the code, you could go in and they wanted where you had a coupling, they wanted a strap within that coupling. Then all of a sudden, the word had in the wording, it used to say fittings. Now it doesn't say fittings. Well, why is that?
Right.
because the fittings that are listed, it's for your grounding and everything, and that helps bond and ground that raceway system, or EMT. Now, why did they take and move that away from there and take fittings out? And I'll tell you why, because fittings is not a means of support.
Right.
And they started making connectors and couplings that would perform that mechanical function. If you go over and actually look in Article 100 and you look at the definition of fitting, it tells you it performs a mechanical function, not an electrical function. So the mechanical portion is making that conduit continuous there. That way you can take and use it as an equipment ground per 25118. That's how it works.
Yeah, and I agree with I think that's William Kirst over there. But like nipples are 24 inches or less.
They are.
So if you look at it from that standpoint, that's a pretty good rule.
Mhm.
Should it be in the code? Well, like when you look at 358.30C, that was in the code language. It was passed by CMP8 in the 2008 code. So if you go in the 2008 code and you say that nipple doesn't need support, it actually lists it as unsupported raceways. So, yeah, you're right. It doesn't need support because it says it right there in 2008 language that it's an unsupported raceway. Now, once they take that out, they remove that unsupported raceway in 2011, then they say, oh, okay, well, we took that language out and now refer to this language, which is 358.30A. You got to throw a strap in there, by my opinion. But I'm not, don't take my opinion, or don't take what Willie Snyder says. Go take what the code says. And the code does not give you special permission to run a 3-foot section of EMT unsupported. Is it going to go anywhere? Probably not. I
You
mean,
know,
we're
I
not sitting
personally,
here. We're not here trying to force our opinion on you. We're trying to tell you what the code says.
this is what I think. If you have something where you're supporting and you're 36 inches and you've got two cabinets there or two boxes or whatever, if that is permitted without a support, I would feel that would be an exception to what 358.30A says. And I
Right.
think they should make that an exception, because they do the same thing when they're talking about unbroken links. And it talks about you can increase it up to 5 foot where the structural members do not readily permit fastening within 3 foot. That would be up high. And
Right.
you're noticing there, they're not requiring it within 3 foot, and that'd be like in between two boxes. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? And no
Yeah.
support. Why? Now, this is why I have an argument with this. If somebody says I can do it for 3 foot, then what the heck do I need to take and put up here and even mention the 3 foot in exception 1 if they're allowing you to go up to 5 foot? You see what
Right.
I'm saying? That's
Yep.
why I'm saying there should be a support. I'm using logic here when I'm
Right.
making some assumptions. And if I look at exception 1 and it's giving me that type of permission, and it specifically references not readily to be fastened within 3 foot, well, that sort of
Yeah.
tells me I needed to support within 3 foot, even if I was fastening on, if I had a junction box on both ends that was securely fastened, just like I did two cabinets.
Yeah. And do you have 358.30B up here? Do you have that as one of the slides?
No, I didn't put that because
Okay.
we wasn't
So
covering it.
I want to mention that it says in 358.30B that you can use a stud as
Mm-hmm.
a means of support to
Sure thing.
securely fasten the conduit if that stud is within 3 foot of both enclosures.
Sure.
So they wasted a lot of time putting that in there if you don't need that stud.
Exactly.
You could just hack that stud out of the way because you don't need it. And why would you do that? Why would you waste your time getting a sawzall in there and cutting a hole in that stud to make it unsupported? That's,
Exactly.
in my opinion, it's the smoking gun of, they say basically right there that it must be supported in accordance with 358.30A and B. And B says that you can use a stud as long as that stud's within 3 foot of either enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's telling me that you have to have a means of support within 3 foot.
Sure. And that's what I say. I look at other parts that are in that article and I do a process of elimination. Well, if you're doing it this way, why is it all of a sudden good for this? You know, that's always my argument is you're going to allow it for one, but not for the other. I'm going to be able to increase it, but I still got sort of the same type of installation where it's connecting between two different points that are solidly fastened in. See what I'm
Right.
saying?
And if you look, the other thing that I'll actually give a shout out to one of our viewers who's saying, I call those things do nothings, but they're a caddy that basically have a clamp on either side. They actually bolt to the box and they actually clamp to either side within 12 inches. And
Mhm.
those things are code compliant. I call them do nothings because I don't think they do anything, but I've had times where inspectors are like, "Oh, you can't use those," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "Well, what I've done is I've cut them and then just screwed them into the box and then just used them on other side." And he's like, "You can't do that. You're voiding the UL listing." And I'm like, "Where does it say that it has to be a listed means of support?"
Mhm.
And then if you go look in the caddy, I'm glad you mentioned that and you go look in the caddy and manufacturer instructions, it says can be cut, can be bent, can be all kinds of different things. So if you go off the actual what it's designed for, you can use it for that. You're using it in an
Sure.
approved method.
And like one said, it's supported when it goes through the sud. No kidding. I agree with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And so they would have wasted a lot of time saying that if for some reason you can just run 3 foot unsupported. Now, another thing I wanted to bring this up, I didn't even really think about this till we started doing this, but let's just say you go and you hang a cabinet. Let's just say this cabinet's 500 pounds or
Mhm.
whatever. So you hang this cabinet, it's 500 pounds. Now you have to put 2 conduits in there and you got to have like parallel connections. The easiest way to do it, in my opinion, is put a piece of strut in between there, put your 2 conduits in there, bolt your piece of strut up, then brace your other cabinet up, mark it out, punch it, then put it up, and the whole time your conduits stay level, and then you could just mount your other enclosure. Now, what you're saying, you had a good point on that too, James. Was now you put both cabinets up. Now you're trying to get your conduit in there. You don't
Sure.
have enough room to do that.
Dang right. I've seen it too many times.
Yeah. So from a logical standpoint, it makes sense to try to take the way the code language is worded as maybe advice to it might be easier to securely fasten your conduits in place with one cabinet and then mount your other cabinet. Because if you're going and mounting both cabinets and then trying to wedge a couple pieces of conduit in there, like if you're, I don't know if you guys know this, but 2-inch EMT doesn't bend so good,
You got
so
that right.
I mean, and then what you end up doing, I mean, yeah, sure, you could cheat the coupling, or if you have 2 cabinets, you could put them together and you can use a close nipple, and the close nipple doesn't require support. So I
Mhm.
don't think this is really that hard of a thing. I think a lot of people overthink things when they're trying to be like educators and try to be out there, and that's why I love the fact of you as an educator, because you'll admit when you're wrong and say, you
Oh,
know
yeah.
what, I got the grounded conductor pointed to the wrong thing again. You know what I mean?
I did. I do stuff like that every now and then. I hadn't changed that illustration. And I was trying to put something out cool for everybody to look at, and I just freaking missed it. I don't care.
I was like, you're gonna
It
get tore
happens.
up. You're gonna get
That's all
tore
right.
up. But
I get tore up for all kinds of stuff anyway, so it doesn't.
so these are awesome pictures. Actually, the myth of the week I put over here is, we were joking around with this thing saying it's missing a whole bunch of supports, but there you could have like all the ones going to this is a, I would say, 100% code compliant install. I don't see anything wrong with this. You have raceway supported enclosures. You have nipples going into the equipment. This is actually at the Home Depot, right where you go out, like right where they freaking have security and stuff. So this is not my install. It's just something I just took a picture of, and it's really funny because I do it as like my myth of the week. And I really thank everyone for participating. like everyone's like, oh, stage, but it's not. It was just something I saw, and I thought, man, that's kind of cool. That I say that's 100% code compliant. All the raceways are supported, all the raceway supported enclosures per 314.23E are all supported per code, and all the nipples are less than 24 inches. So I say that's a code compliant install. Then over here on the right, we have one that I did at one of the jobs, and the boss just says, do it like this. I said, yes, sir. And I went and I did it like that. I didn't argue. He just said, do it. I don't know if the box is big enough. There was like a bunch of welders that went in there. They went through there, so they passed through there. So then this comes back to another myth that we did previously, where none of the grounding conductors spliced, or there was no splices. So it was compliant per 250-148. And I would say that the raceways that are going into the panel are less than 24 inches, less than 18 inches. I think they were like 14 inches or something. And then the raceways that are coming out of the ground are less than 36. So to me, that's a code compliant install. And we were sitting there on one of the groups, and we were joking around. If you see on the next slide, James, and one of the guys were like, hey, that needs support. So I took some of this plumber's holy iron and I started throwing it around stuff. And the one on the right is actually, it's probably got more comments for a little, for like, I think that thing has like 20,000 comments on the one on the right. But I kind of copied it, one on the left, and I was just joking around a little bit. But everyone's like, oh, you need to support your conduits. And I was like, all right. And then they're like, oh, that's not code compliant because that's not securely fastened. And it's like, so one way it's securely fastened by the lock rings, and the other way it's not securely fastened by the holy iron.
That's right.
So it's kind of funny how we joke around and we get these people fired up and start throwing these things in and get a lot of comments messing around. And then the other one is this is my fire alarm install. This is at one of the plants I was working at. And you could see I ran strut all the way down the middle of all those conduits coming up from all my booster panels and everything. And, a lot of people will say that's not needed, but I was like, all those raceways are about 30 inches. And, I just felt they needed to be securely fastened. It's in a place that could be subject to physical damage. And I just felt it was a better install to go ahead and run a piece of strut down it and fasten them. Now, to notice right below there, you have to probably zoom in. And a lot of people who saw the myth of the week know that I did all the power to, and I ran nipples all down from all the booster panels for all the power. That's literally the only place the power could come is right on that side, just next to the battery cabinet, come up into the 110 volt section. But the whole thing is that I was really proud of this install, and the whole thing was, it's like, you could see where I could show you right now, it's kind of a gray area because between all my boxes is less than 24 inches, and they don't have a conduit support installed. And then all the ones that are longer than 24 inches all do. So I did this one 100% based on how I understand the code. And I believe this 100% code compliant install. It passed inspection, so it is, but
Looks
it
good
just,
to me.
yeah, it came out good. It came out clean, and all the people at the facility liked it. And they said it was some of the best looking stuff that was out there. Yep. So thanks for everyone for participating. Big shout out to NEC for Dummies. Thanks so much for joining in all our stuff that we do. And I really appreciate the Code Ninjas. And I hope that we can provide some really good material moving forward and just keep it going.
All right, let's move on because we're at 25 minutes and I got a lot of stuff to cover.
All right. Well, you better hurry up. Go fast.
I got a lot. All right. Well, since we were talking about nipples this week, I thought, you know what? I'll just do something on wiring methods. And I just set something up that's pretty basic. This actually comes from our calculations program, the journeyman and all of that. And all I did here is just sort of show sizing some of the raceways. And I'm going to do same size and different size conductors. And I'm going to show a nipple, and I'm going to show all the tables and everything. So this one here, we're going to do rigid metal conduit, and we got 4 number 6s. Now, anybody that's dealt with a code for any amount of time, you know, when you go and look at this, you're going to go to Annex C and you're going to look at one of the tables. In this case, we're looking at table C.9, where we're dealing with rigid metal conduit. And you'll see that we have 4 number 6s, and I highlighted everything in green up and down so you can see. And you'll see it hold a 3/4 inch will hold 4 conductors. That's pretty basic. You go back, we tell you here it's a 3/4 inch conduit.
Okay.
Simple, nothing hard about that. Very simple.
I really do like the color on your illustrations. That's really awesome, man. It's looking good.
Well, I can tell you the new version that I'm going to have coming out, all of this is going to be colored in here, the illustration, everything. And I can tell you they're sweet looking.
Well, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I noticed that was an addition from your last ones. It looks good.
Yeah, I've been trying to upgrade everything and really make something super sharp out there for everybody.
Nice.
Now, this is where you got different size conductors. And you'll see we have a whole lot of conductors in here, and we're running in an EMT. So I'm going to size this electrical metallic tubing that's going over here to this junction box. And we have 12 number 14s, 4 number 12s, and 4 number 10s. So if I come over here and I look, you'll see the number 14 is good for the square inch rating of 0.0097. The number 12 is good at 0.0133, and the number 10 is good at 0.211. Well, if I come back here and I look at my illustration, you'll see that I've got my sizes here all lined up. Then I take the number 14, 12 of those at 0.0097 square inches. That's going to give me 0.1164. Then my number 12 was good for 0.0133 square inches. I had 4 of those. That'll give me a total of 0.0532. And then for my number 10, it was good for 0.0211 square inches. I had 4 of those, and that'll give me 0.0844. Just add it all up together, and that's going to give you 0.254 square inches. Now, you come over here, and I'm going to look, because I have more than 2 conductors, so I'm going to be over 2 wires. I actually put that in the wrong spot. And it's going to tell you the next size up above that is going to be a 1-inch conduit. Okay. Because I have 0.346 square inches. So I come back here and I look at this, you'll see I have a 1-inch conduit.
Right.
Now, that's pretty basic. It's not that hard to follow through. I always tell everybody, and you know this when I'm doing the journey for the journeyman, I always tell you when you're sizing boxes, your conduits and things like that, there's 2 rules of thumbs that you follow. You have same size conductors or different size conductors. And as long as you follow that process, you shouldn't have any problem doing this.
And then I want to let everyone know this is not having to do with adjustment factors or anything, because like if you guys go out there and you start listening to Willie Jackerson, man, you'll get like 26 number 12s in a 3/4, and you just can't do that stuff, you know. So that's pushing it code way too far.
Right. And one of the things, you know, we take on ours, we tell you here when you're doing it, we're telling you got THWN. Now, that would bring up a good point, because I'll just sort of cover this real quick since that was brought up. If you look where it says THWN here, now, if I go over and I look at 110.14C in the code, and you look at the last sentence, it's going to talk about adjustment and correction factors, and it's going to tell you can use the higher rated conductor. Okay.
Right.
Now, what happens here is if you're applying adjustment and correction factors, you need to go look at table 310.4A. And when you pick that up, that's where you have your conductor characteristics. That's exactly what the table is going to say.
Right.
When you come down and pick up THHN, it'll tell you it has a insulation rating of 90 degrees C. But now if I pick up THWN, unless it's THWN-2, which we're not telling you that here, if I was doing derating factors for this, because this was going to be an outside load, I could not use that 90 C column. I would have to use the 75 C because this is a THWN conductor.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. I wasn't trying to get you on a tangent. I just noticed one of the listeners.
You know, I'll go on them.
Yeah. Yeah. I just noticed one of the listeners had mentioned the insulation type.
Yeah. If they have any questions like that, they can ask away. I have no problem veering off on anything.
Nice.
You know, we were doing that one journeyman. Somebody asked me a question and I just went on a tangent. And he goes, dang. He goes, are you just quoting all that off the top of your head without even looking? I said, yeah. He goes, man, I can't. He goes, I've never seen anybody do that. I said, well, I've been doing it a long time, brother.
Yeah. You're a legendary teacher, so I'll let you keep teaching, sir.
I don't know about legendary, at least in my own mind anyway, right?
Well, I'll be honest with everyone out there. I actually created the Willie Jackerson podcast, and Willie Jackerson is a fake character. That's why it's a fictional podcast. So,
yeah, I already knew that. I mean, most people know it anyway. I don't know why they get so bent out of shape about it.
Yeah, it's funny.
But here's looking at a nipple. Now, before I get started on here, I just want to take a look at something. I'm going to go look at a specific table. Now, right here is table 1. If you look at note 4, and I'm going to read what it says. Nobody has to take my word for it. I'm just going to tell you what it says. It says where conduit or tubing, looky there, nipples. It says nipples. Having a maximum length not to exceed what? 24 inches are stalled. Now listen to this. Between boxes, cabinets, and similar closers, the nipple shall be permitted to be filled to what? 60% of their total cross-sectional area.
Yeah.
And then it'll tell you that the adjustment factors don't apply to this condition.
Right.
Everybody.
Well, and then if you're Willie Jackerson, all the conductors are so packed in there. That's your support means.
That's right. Now, watch this. Now, I'm going to prove this. Now, everybody at this point should agree. If it's 24 inches or less, it's what?
A nipple.
It's a nipple. Okay. And some will say, well, that's in chapter 9. Well, guess what? Chapter 9 is still full code text. Okay. Yep. It's one of the chapters. It's not an annex.
And this is a public service announcement from High Voltage Live. We do not want our followers to run around with floppy nipples.
Oh, God. I'm getting older. It's going to eventually happen. Okay. Now, let's take a look here. Now, I've got 14 number 8, 12 number 10, 9 number 12, and 9 number 14. Okay, so we're going to go over and we're going to look at what the square inch rating is here. You'll see right here for number 14, again, we still have all the same. The only thing we added from the previous problem was number 8, which is good at 0.0366 square inches.
Right.
Okay, so we'll go back. We'll just check everything. Yep, all this lines up perfect. So looking at this, my number 12, conductors here. As I look at it, I had 9 conductors here. So I'm going to multiply that 0.0133 square inches. That's going to give me 0.1197. Then I had 0.0097, which was the number 14. I had 9 of those. That's good for 0.0873 square inches. And then I had number 10, which is good at 0.0211 square inches. I had 12 of those. That's going to give me 0.2532 square inches. And then for my number 8, which is good at 0.0366 square inches, I had 14 of those. Multiply that, that's going to give me 0.5124. Add all that up together, and I got 0.9726 square inches. Now,
yeah, that's exactly what I got too. So I'm following you on my calculator.
Okay, so now if I go in and I look at 100% fill, I need to find something. I'm going to take it 60% that is going to contain that 0.972 square inches. Okay, now look here. When I went too far, I come over here to 100%. I've already done the calculation. I can already tell you the 1.496 ain't going to work. So my 1.5 inch is good at 2.036 square inches. And I'm going to show you something else where you don't even have to do this portion. I'm just going to prove it at this point. So I'll take that 1.5 inch there at 2.036 square inches times 60%, and that's going to give me 1.2216, which will contain that 0.9726 square inches. Now, I want you to look at this value, 1.2216. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something there. If I come over here and do the 60%, it's already done for you, and we did it at 1.2216, but it says 1.221.
Right.
That proved my calculation right there, and how to take and do a calculation for doing the nipple fill.
Yeah,
now,
that's awesome.
That proves the point as far as what's considered a nipple and what is considered a raceway. So I always will say 24 inches or less is a nipple. Anything over that's considered a raceway.
I agree.
Okay. Now,
not everyone agrees with us. There's been some other people that haven't agreed with us, and that's fine. We're just telling you what the code says. We're not trying to tell you what we think it should say or how our interpretation is, or we're just saying this is what we think. This is what we're reading in the actual code language. If you want to interpret differently, that's fine. I'm not going to jump off a cliff and say, if you don't put a strap in there, you're a hack. If you want to go to heads with the inspector, and if that inspector says you need to add a support in there, you have to do it, because there's no argument saying you don't.
That's right. And, what I try to do when I'm looking at this stuff is give a basis off what I read in the code and the way the code's laid out. Now, some might not agree with it, and I'm okay with that. But I'm just showing you where I made my basis. It's, I hate when people use the term, it's just common sense.
Yeah.
And I've heard that so many times. And no, common sense, I don't agree with that terminology. I believe if you're going to make a substantiation on something, show me where the substantiation is in the code. I don't want to hear common sense.
We used to always joke around, because there was this guy, Frank, and he used to always say, it ain't going nowhere. And then we would always say that, like, every time we'd put something in, we're like, that's not going anywhere. And it's like, yeah, well, but is it compliant with the code language?
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, like, Frank used to put in MC cable. He wouldn't strap none of his MCs, and well, that's not going anywhere. Well, yeah, but it's not code compliant.
Sure.
And I don't care if it's 14 inches inside a stud wall. It's got to be supported within 12 inches of the box. And so, that's the thing. Like, oh, well, it's well, that's only in accessible areas. So you could sit there and use all these different arguments. You could sit there and go, oh, well, MC cable, you don't need the support can be the connector. Well, that's only in that wiring method. So, we run into that stuff. And I had a lot of fun this week. I mean, I was battling back and forth with a bunch of people, and it was fun. I had a lot of fun. And, if anyone thinks that I'm trying to be mean or spiteful to anybody, I'm not. I love learning, and I'll tell you I'm wrong just the same as anybody else, I have no problem saying I'm wrong, and,
I agree. And that's part of it. If somebody shows me something, if I see it wrong, I agree with you. I'm not going to sit there and try to argue it, but if I believe in something, I'm going to stand up for it.
Right.
And I've always been that way.
Yeah. And what I think is awesome, there's going to be a lot of these 2023 code changes that we're going to have to address. And like there's one that I really think we need to cover when we get further into this thing, which is 110.3b. And you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm going to make some
we're not there on this one yet.
Yeah. But you could go ahead and I think this is an awesome segment. Yeah, I think this is an awesome segment. This is brought to you by the NEC Code Ninjas, the 2023 NEC Code Ninjas, our new group that we just made. And so thanks, James, for helping me out with it. And we're gonna just start blasting you with a bunch of these are not set in stone yet. They have not been voted on. So these are
It
just
still
proposed
has
changes.
a few more, it's got to go through the Standards Council and stuff, but pretty much most stuff we're going to show you is going to be probably 95% correct.
Yeah, and like with Article 100, basically all the definitions, they did a lot of work with using the manual of style to get all the definitions in Article 100 for the 2023. As it looks, that's I talked with a bunch of the Jeff Sargent. I actually had a conversation with him on NEC Live. And he was like, man, that's all going great. And it all went great. And everyone did a lot of work. David Williams did a lot of hard work on it. And the correlating committee did a lot of hard work on it. And they say it's going to be really good. And I think it's a good change to get all the definitions in Article 100.
When you had told me about that, I said, well, that's not going to happen unless the style manual's changed for the NEC, because the way it was written before, it had to be used in 2 or more articles of the code, and it went into Article 100. Otherwise, it was specific to that article. And
Right.
I told you, I said they'll have to rewrite that style manual for the NEC for it to happen, and that's what they did.
Nice.
And so, what happened? Looking at this in Article 100, there's no longer any parts. We used to have Part 1 that were all the general terms, and then anything over 1,000 votes was in Part 2, and then there were specific definitions that dealt with hazardous classified locations in Part 3.
Right.
That has been taken out. So I started this off to sort of show that you're not going to see the parts anymore. Okay.
Right.
And this is a committee statement that comes in, and it tells everybody that they've revised Article 100 by removing the parts. And then it tells you, and I'm going to show this in a minute, about the scope of Article 100. It also was modified by removing the language for those terms used in 2 or more articles, where we would look at whatever section point 2 as our reference and the last paragraph of that scope statement. And
Nice.
then the panel understands that the approval of the scope statements is a responsibility of the National Electrical Code Correlating Committee. Okay.
Right.
So the panel concludes that this particular revision complies with the revised style manual in 2.2. And that's what I was talking about a while ago. They were going to have to redo the style manual for this to happen.
Right.
And since they did that, Article 100 is no longer going to be what? Subdivided.
Yep.
Okay.
Which was kind of weird I didn't like that from the last cycle anyway.
Yeah. I understood
they said
why they did it.
They said it's been that way for a long time, but.
Well, there's a lot of other standards that all definitions are in Article 100. And they sort of brought it up to where it matches that. And what they tell you is the NEC, that it has definitions that are multiple parts of Article 100, and many of the definitions scattered throughout the NEC, and many of them are in the point 2 section of the articles. Right. And then they'll tell you most of the other standards that under the NFPA, they have their definitions where? In one location, and this will allow the NEC to maintain and have the same requirements now.
Well, and I'm always telling my apprentices when they're like in a testing situation or something that they should always go to the Article 100. And then at the same time, now with that being said, if it's only mentioned in one place in the code, it'll give the reference of what reference is the only one place.
Sure. And something I want to point out to anybody that watches this podcast is anything I'm showing you in here and I show it underlined or I show it struck through, there's very specific reasons, because this has been done looking at the first draft and second draft, combining the two to, some of this I have to write myself on the substantiation and take from both parts so it can be understood. But basically, like this slide here, this is everything that's been added just at the start of Article 100 underneath the scope. And what it tells you here is that this article contains only those definitions essential to the application of the NEC. It is not intended to include commonly defined general terms or commonly defined technical terms from related codes and standards. Now, that's important because what they're telling you is if they're pulling something from a certain other reference in another NFPA standard, it's going to say what it says.
Right. Okay. And one thing I want to tell you, James, we had one of our viewers who said thanks a lot, and I thank you a lot for doing this because this is awesome, and I'm always trying to get like the latest dirt on the next code cycle. And I do want to get a shout out to everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Volt Online Academy on YouTube, and subscribe, and you'll never miss any of our content. So I want to thank everyone that's our viewers because it's awesome that James put this together. So
well, I appreciate everybody saying that. Just remember to use our stuff when you're doing your code change update for your license.
Dude, I tell you what, if you get Colorado, dude, I got you a bunch of people that are like stall cups.
I'm waiting on them.
They're like stall cups getting that money this year. So I'm like, all right, let's do it.
I've had a lot of people that have messaged, when are you getting approval? I'm trying, man. It's COVID that's killing me, man. Yeah. But I am in the process of writing the code changes now. And nice. My goal, if everything goes correctly, I hope by the end of October, November, somewhere in there, having the 2023 NEC changes online. I'll be the first by far.
Hey, and just to all the people out there, if you get the continuing education through James Stallcup, don't let him jip you and only give you 220 changes. He can give you 261. So don't let him jip you. He still owes me 40. So I'm gonna get him back. I'm gonna get those.
Okay. Now, one of the other things it points out here, and this is important right here, I need people to pay attention here.
Yep.
It also tells you that an article number in parentheses following that definition indicates that the definition only applies to that article. Now, everybody hearing what I'm saying? So if somebody's coming in arguing with you on a definition and you see an article number in parentheses and it's pertaining to something else, you tell them, nah, that definition don't apply there, brother. Because this specifically tells you that. Now,
absolutely.
The informational note's important too, because it tells you a definition that is followed by a reference in brackets has been extracted from one of the following standards. Only editorial changes were made to the extracted text to make it consistent with the NEC. And then you'll see we have a whole bunch of NFPA standards here. And then I have a whole bunch of them right here also. There's 13 of them that they recognize. So I always tell people just follow along with what we're showing you here in the definitions. And this is going to be the new concept of how we're going to apply Article 100. And I hope that's very helpful to everybody that's watching the podcast.
Oh, dude, I already got a few arguments starting right now.
I love it. Bring it on, baby. So in order to do that, I went ahead and correlated the committee statement. And it tells you the correlating committee advises that article scope statements are the responsibility of the correlating committee, and the correlating committee rejects the panel action. Revising the scope to include an explanation of placing the article number in parentheses at the end of the definition will indicate the definition only applies to that article to comply with 2.2.2.3.2 of the NEC style manual. An informational note was added to identify the reference standards where the extracted material originated to comply with 4.3.2.3 of the NEC style manual. So that proves the point right there when we look back here and we're looking at the scope and the informational note.
So we'll try to put a link up there for the style manual. But I would recommend anybody go download the Manual of Style because it's pretty cool. There's a lot of unenforceable words in there and stuff and informational notes.
I think some of them are going to be interested to see the last change we're going to do, because we're actually going to show you dealing with a new class 4 type circuit.
Nice.
So
Yeah, I never saw
looking.
that before. I did a little. I cheated. I peeked, and I had
It's
to go
okay.
look at it.
I know it's fun to go see what's new. I mean, it's funny as I'm going through this stuff, because I mean, I'm having to look at the first draft, second draft, correlate everything, and I can tell you it takes time to read everything, and
Yeah.
you've got all these other proposals that go with it. You may have to go look at some of those. So it's a daunting little task to put this stuff together.
No, dude, I appreciate it. You did a lot of hard work this week, and it was awesome, man.
Yeah, we're gonna of course this doesn't have the illustrations yet. We're about to start those, and
Okay.
we'll have illustrations that correlate with this in the publication and stuff. Now, the next change I did was change number 3, and this is where we're doing accessible as applied to wiring methods. And what they added in here, they'll tell you it's capable of being removed or exposed without damaging the building structure or finish, are not permanently closed in, and this is important, or blocked by the structure, other electrical equipment, or other building systems. Now, this has always been a contentious point, because I've always agreed with what went in here. And they tell you that these other building system, and this is from the committee statement, so they're clarifying stuff I've always expressed.
Right.
But it says, such as electrical wasteways, and look here, plumbing pipes and mechanical systems are presently considered accessible since they are not part of the structure or finish of the building. Therefore, the revised wording clarifies the intent of this definition now. So that's a good change. And it's actually an important change, because they're basically telling you that the other stuff that's there, like plumbing pipes and mechanical systems, they're considered what? Accessible as it applies to the wiring methods.
Right.
For electrical. That proves the point. There shouldn't be any argument with this now.
Yep. I agree.
I think this is a great change.
That is pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I was going through looking at the definitions, I pulled this one out. I was like, I know what this is about. This is important, because this gives clarification now.
Right.
Now, the next one they added, and I thought this was sort of funny, and I'll explain why in a minute, but they put a definition for motor branch circuit. And they tell you the circuit conductors, including equipment between the motor branch circuit, short circuit, and ground fault protective device, and an individual motor. Right. Now, they did this. This creates a definition to differentiate between what a branch circuit is and a motor branch circuit. Okay. Now, this brings another point up that I've always argued. I've had this argument, and we'll get to this later in a future broadcast when we get to 210.8F and we deal with outdoor outlets.
Oh, hey.
We had where I'm going now, don't you?
Yeah, we had a listener ask what's the clearance in front of a J box, and they're literally, it could be 0 as long as you get the cover off.
Yeah, there's no clearance requirements in front of that.
Right.
And when you go in and you start looking at working clearances, you have to remember this is it says while you're working on it, energize. Okay. Right. Now, some will say, well, I could get in there and work on that energize. Well, not exactly, because if you go look at OSHA and NFPA 70E, basically that should be locked and tagged out before you get in there and work on it.
I'm pretty sure that guy's a UL inspector, so I wouldn't listen to him too much.
Okay. Well, I'm just sort of making a point, because I always tell people now, if it's something that you and you need to go to NFPA 70E, and when you go over there, we talk about what's considered normal and abnormal,
right?
And that would be considered normal operating conditions there, and And there's no reason you should have to get in that junction box and work on it while it's hot. Therefore, you should be able to lock and tag that out, because you're not going to be doing any type of maintenance, troubleshooting, or anything like that in it. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, so that is true with the best practice thing. What I'm basically saying is, if I'm a foreman and I'm exposing my employee to hazards, basically what I'm doing is I'm gonna tell him, you're able to pull that cover off, you're able to examine it, and you're able to do work on that box while energized without removing personal protective equipment of those insulated conductors. Now, if you're going to start pulling wire nuts off and stuff, then I'm going to have a problem with it while energized. But if you just are going to go in there for examination and there's no exposed energized components in there, then that's not a clearance issue.
No, it's not. And that's why I was saying you got to go over and look at 110.26A1, and that'll handle that for you.
Right.
Because it tells you when you're doing adjustment, troubleshooting, maintenance, things like that while it's energized. And then you have to look at, well, do I have to work on that energizer? There has to be a reason. And there's no reason you should be in that box working on it while it's energized.
Did it ever used to say 3 inch? You must have 3 inches of clearance from electrical equipment, or like regardless for accessibility?
The code's never said that I'm aware of.
I never.
The only time it's ever made any reference to something like that is while you're working on it energized. And
Right.
that's what you have to look at. It's like I tell people, I'll give you a good example. Let's say I've got a motor, I got a controller, and I got a disconnect. And I'll ask people, I'll say, and it could be the same, just like outside where you have an AC unit, you just have one of those pull-out type disconnects. I'll ask them, does that disconnect need to have a clearance, a 3 foot? And everybody go, oh, yeah, it has to have 3 foot. I said, you sure about that? Because if it's a fusible disconnect, I agree with you, because you could actually open that up and check the fuses while it's energized. But when you have just a non-fused disconnect, by code, and not by code, but by 70E and OSHA, I should go upstream and lock and tag that out before I work on it. Therefore, if I'm not working on it while it's energized, therefore I don't need what? A working clearance.
Yep.
That's the way I always look at that.
Not likely to be worked on while energized. Well, we have a listener that's actually waiting for our 210.8F show that is going to be coming up.
Yeah. So. Now, let me point something out here. Now, this was an argument we used to get into, and it dealt with the definition of outlet. And I broke this down, and I basically gave them the definition where I talk about an individual branch circuit and all that stuff. And now this is my opinion. Okay. I believe there's a reason they put these branch circuits in there to tell you whatever type of branch circuit it is and what it's used for. And when I have an individual branch circuit, what does it go to? Utilization equipment, doesn't it?
Yep.
And then there's a definition for utilization equipment. And then when I look at this and I've got a motor branch circuit now, well, why are they putting this in there? Because they're telling you it goes to an individual motor. Now, somebody would say, oh, well, you come in and at the end of that branch circuit, it's an outlet. No, it's not. What's it here? I'm going to a motor. That's making what? A termination.
Yeah.
To that.
And I'm interested to see CMP's substantiation. Do you have that on the next slide?
It's right here. It tells you it. It just said they committed a definition to differentiate between a branch circuit and a motor branch circuit.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought it might have like more, like I see the committee statement, but I thought it might have more substantiation.
They just kept it like this. And that's what I'm trying to say is there's a branch circuit and then there's a motor branch circuit. And I'll take it even a step further. If you take and you look, and I'm going to give 3 examples here. If I have a box, is that box an outlet? Sure it is. Mm-hmm. Because you go look at Article 314, the heading says what? Outlet boxes. And then it tells you that can be a a device box, a round or optical box, a square box, other type of boxes. Those are outlet boxes. Now I'll take it one other step further. Why do they have two definitions for receptacle? They tell you what a receptacle is, and then they tell you what a receptacle outlet is. Now this is funny. What is a receptacle outlet? It's a device that is inside what? An outlet.
A box.
A box.
Yeah.
And that's why I say when you look at that stuff, it makes sense.
So, and one of our listeners kind of keyed in on something we've always said. Why do they have so many different definitions of branch circuit? Why do you have individual branch circuit,
That's
appliance branch circuit,
Motor branch circuit.
individual branch circuit, motor branch circuit now? And so, well, like they're wasting their time because they're all branch circuits if the outlet is the end of the wiring method.
That's what I always said. Why would you need all these things for branch circuits if it's automatically an outlet? And another thing, you got all these different type of lighting out or lighting units. Why do we have a lighting outlet also?
Yeah.
That's always been my argument.
Well, we're gonna have to
it too.
We're gonna have to propose a lighting branch circuit. I mean, it's just like, all right, whatever. I mean, you want all these different branch circuits to define all these different situations. Like, in my opinion, when you put that AC unit out there, that's a utilization equipment, and there's very little risk to personnel. So Class A GFCI protections is not really that big of a deal.
And like the guy he put in there, he put a question where he said appliance branch circuit. Well, I agree with you. Let's take a look at this. Is an AC unit an appliance?
I think if it's a hermetically sealed motor, it's not, but I don't think that is by itself. So I think it is an appliance.
It is an appliance. Matter of fact, if you go look at the definition of appliance in Article 100, it tells you right there, such as what? An AC unit. So if that is the case, it would make sense to me. That would, if I'm going over feeding that, is that an appliance branch circuit? I rest my. I'm just showing.
Well, and you were right about the 210.8D. That if they wanted it to have GFCI protection, they could have removed outdoor outlet and just added it to D.
Sure, and I brought that up a long time ago, and they said, well, it has cord and plug for the sump pump. I said, well, that shouldn't actually be there because that's hardwired, and it was over in 422.5F. Well, guess what? In this 2023 cycle, they removed that cord and plug. I guess the committee might have heard me state that, or somebody submitted it, and they took the cord and plug connected out of 210.8D, and that's where you deal with your specific appliances there. And then they go in, and there's going to be a whole new list of stuff that they want GFCI protection. And my argument is this: you add all these new items that need GFCI protection, but you don't add AC units. How come?
Right.
And then, they wrote a thing in the 2020. Now, I'm going to say this. I want everybody to hear this. As far as I know, we were the only code change book that did not say you need a GFCI protection for that AC unit in 210.8F. And we didn't agree with it.
Now, and this is going to be tough too, because this is where it gets tricky, because they say a lot of states have amended it.
Sure they have.
And they've amended it based on the split system units that have compatibility issues. But the whole thing is that I don't know. I mean, to me personally, it's like, I think for me, it's an enforcement problem, because what's going to happen is the inspectors get all wind downstream that that's not an outlet and and you don't need that. And then all of a sudden what's going to happen is they're going to say, well, all right, well, we don't need to enforce that because it's not a safety issue. And so then what ends up happening is you get into this thing. Like, I mean, dude, I swear to God, this is going to be hard, because what's the difference between like a 50 amp, a 60 amp AC unit? Because where's that differential where a 60 amp AC unit doesn't pose as much hazard as a 50 amp AC unit? So there's a weird break there. And to me, that's kind of bizarre. Like
Sure it
now,
is.
all of a sudden, the 60 amp doesn't pose as much hazard as a 50 amp.
Sure. You know, and I heard somebody, I was reading one and I made a comment. Nobody ever replied back on it, but they said it was a sunrise issue because they had the TIA
A
that came.
sunset.
Yeah.
A sunset.
And, you know, I brought this up. They wrote in the TIA that you needed, they dealt with the split phase and all of that. And now here we come to 2023 and they don't even make a reference to it. And they say, well, it'll be compatible when the new UL standard comes out. I'm going to tell you right now, no, it isn't. Because
Yeah.
in 2024, January 1st, 2024, when it comes out, it's at 10 milliamps. I take a Class A GFCI device. What's it at? 6 milliamps. There's a compatibility issue.
I think that what they're saying is the manufacturer says it will be below 10 milliamps, but they don't say what it's actually going to be. It's not going to be below 6. But the whole thing is like there it's a really stupid thing because all we have to do is pull a neutral to these units. But the problem for me personally is really like you just can't keep kicking kicking this can down the road, in my opinion. That's what they're doing. They're just kicking the can down the road.
They are.
And they're saying, oh, the manufacturer will deal with it. The manufacturer doesn't even know how to put the right screws in there that freaking, tighten the right direction or what, like we're having big battles. Like they don't know what. So what my issue is with it is we have something that we think is a serious problem that we think we want to get addressed. And what ends up happening is the inspector says, you know what, you don't need GFCI because it's a usability issue. Okay, cool. Well, now they don't enforce it. So then what happens is now you have pieces of the code language that are effectively useless because they can't be enforced.
That's
Because
right.
what happens, like let's be honest. Let's talk about Willie Jackerson's freezer, right? So he throws it on a GFCI. GFCI trips. He loses the hunt meat. So then he goes and takes the GFCI off, puts it back. Well, I would rather have a product that's code compliant that protects personnel rather than just taking that GFCI off and putting a regular outlet in there, and then you have hazards that exist. I don't want Willie to lose the hunting meat, but at the same time, it's like if that's a compatibility issue, that's what's going to happen every time,
Sure.
regardless whether you're an inspector, whether you're whatever, CMP member, whether you're anybody. That's what's going to happen. They're going to take the GFCI out. They're going to put a regular outlet back in, and they're going to turn it back on, and they're not going to lose the hunting meat again.
Sure.
So I'd rather have compatible products.
My whole issue will always be this. If you want GFCI protection, put it in 210.8D.
I agree.
Don't try to come up and change and twist some terminology of a definition and say that the end of the wiring method is an outlet. That is ridiculous.
I
I
agree.
do not agree with that one bit. And my whole argument on that is if that is meant to be, if you're going to tell me the end of the wiring method's an outlet, and then I say, well, what about a transformer and this and that? And they go, well, it's just common sense. That's not an outlet. That's wanting to have your cake and eat it too, and using that common sense issue again, I don't agree with.
Yeah, and you go there with that common sense thing. It only works for that argument. Like look at 210.8F from the standpoint of what other articles mention outlets that need GFCI protection.
That's right.
Not a single one. That's the unicorn of 210. And that's what my problem is with it, because I did a post and I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting ready to put a hardwired AC unit next to my sink. How far away do I need to be, and does it need to be GFCI protected? And they're like, oh, we better not do that, and whatever. But there is literally, you can do that. You can go put your AC unit, as long as it's indoor. on your dwelling unit, you could put it within 6 foot of your sink, and GFCI protection is not required.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, but it's not an outdoor outlet; it's an indoor outlet that's within 6 foot of a sink, and that's not covered.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so funny.
That's always been my argument, and there's a reason they have certain things in the code, and they specifically say outlets. Well, why is that? Because it's an outlet at the end of where the branch circuit, and when you look at that definition of outlet, that's where it tells you it is. But if you just hypothetically say, an outlet's at the end of the branch circuit, hell, that applies to everything.
Well, and see, there's a reason that nobody has tackled this. Like nobody in the internet world or in the social media world. That's why we're the most electrifying podcast on social media. Because we tackle the hard topics, like the topics nobody wants to tackle. And we're going to bring you the code language. We're going to bring as much as we can. Nat King code, bust the miss. And James is ready to tackle everything. So I'm sorry to veer you off topic with 210.8F, but
I actually brought it up because of the branch circuit for a moment.
We'll get back on topic here. Sorry about that.
Okay. Now, here's a new one. Class 4 circuits, everybody.
Ooh.
This is brand new, and it's going to tell you, it's going to refer over to new Article 726. In this definition, you're going to see for Class 4 circuit, it's going to have Article 726, and it's going to tell you this is the portion of the wiring system between the load side of a Class 4 transmitter and a Class 4 receiver or Class 4 utilization equipment as appropriate due to the active monitoring and control of the voltages and current provided. A Class 4 circuit considers safety from a fire initiation standpoint and provides acceptable protection from electric shock.
So can you give like all our dummies out there like me example of what a Class 4 circuit is?
I'm going to show you right here where we're going to deal with the committee statement, because it specifically lays everything out for you, and it's a pretty big statement. So and I did this on purpose so everybody could follow. The first revision creates a new Article 726 for Class 4 power systems.
Okay.
The panel proposes that this new article should follow Article 725 and be renumbered 726. Now,
okay,
what is Article 725?
Class 2, I believe.
Class 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to have it right after that. So a lot of people will be familiar with Class 1, 2, and 3 circuits, knowing it's an Article 725. When you're going to deal with Class 4, just remember it's the next article after that.
You know what my favorite one is 725 136B, which says that you can share compartments with Class 1 and Class 2 circuits as long as your insulation types are the same.
Yeah, that'll be one of the myth things we'll do pretty
All
soon.
right. Okay? Yeah, I like that one.
Now, the next part says this proposed new article also includes a new cable type that's specifically for Class 4 systems. Then they're going to tell you that Class 4, because somebody I noticed put in there power limited, Class 4 is different than Class 2 or Class 3 power limited circuits.
Nice.
Okay?
Right.
Now, they're going to make a reference here to 725 121A4, and it indicates that listed equipment with a limited power source output can be considered Class 2 circuits, and they're going to tell you to look at UL 62368-1 requires the output of a limited power source to be power limited. So therefore, these Class 4 systems do not limit the output of the power source, but rather the systems limit the energy and power available into a fault condition, including human contact, arcing, and resistant faults. Then they tell you, if this is monitored and controlled correctly, Class 4 can be as safe or safer than the LPS, but because they are fault limiting rather than source limiting. Now, I want you to pay attention. Fault limiting.
Right.
Okay. Now, when you start getting into that, if you go and look, where do we start looking where we're dealing with faults and stuff? When you're dealing with overcurrent devices, it's going to be the same
Right.
concept. We're going to have to address this in the 70 standard.
Right.
But if you go look at 240.67 A and B and 240.87 A and B, that's where they talk about where you start using stuff to limit the characteristics of the fault that'll be available to you.
Well,
Okay.
and Ryan Jackson talked about this one time in one of his episodes where he had a class 2 transformer that burned a house down, and the fire marshal was like, how could this happen? And he's like, class 2 could burn a house down just the same as anything else,
Sure it can.
and so I agree with you on that fault, because class 2 faults can be the same as a class 1 fault. It's just different wiring methods.
Sure. And then it tells you right after that. Now watch what the last portion of this sentence says. These systems need to be treated differently in the NEC and in product standards.
Right.
So it's proving my point right there. Then it says in class 4 circuits. Now, this is something you'll see in the 70 document, because we always tell you when you're working where you have faults and stuff, we always tell you to do what? Mitigate the hazard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, eliminate
No,
the hazard as much as possible.
yeah, but we also say mitigate. That's
Right.
that is the exact language we use. And I want
Okay.
to point out, when you're doing something in 70E, what is one of the other things we tell you have to do? A risk evaluation.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's look what it says here. In class 4 circuit, risk are mitigated. Now, look at there. That's sort of some of the same language, isn't it?
Yep. And
Okay,
I'm just trying to say that basically I look at electricians as our job is to eliminate or mitigate the hazards as much as possible.
sure,
If we can eliminate the risk, awesome. But you can't always do that. We can just mitigate it. But
sure.
one of our listeners mentioned something about a table for like a table for class 4, and I don't think that that would really be necessary, because anything that's class 4 would just be between a certain range that's under 600 volts, right?
I'm assuming so. I haven't actually spent the time. I didn't have time to go through Article 726 and read all about it yet.
Okay.
I was going to say that when we get to the changes, and then I'll tie it back into the definition later.
10-4. All right.
Okay.
And thanks for the listeners for keeping the questions going, because it's making a really good topic here.
Sure it does. And I think from this point on, anybody that's attending, as we're doing these changes, we're going to be getting a lot of questions. So,
well, and you can post like the emails that you get. I know you get like hundreds of emails a week, and you can post some of them. We won't put anybody's names on there, but you can, like, we can actually read some of the emails we get, and we're basing these off of our emails that we get, and so whoever sent the emails that got this one out there, thank you a lot.
yeah, actually, it was sort of funny because we were talking about last week. It was actually, I had got some message and emails and said, hey, won't y'all do the 2023 NEC changes as part of y'all's podcast?
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah.
hell yeah, we can do that.
Dude, we
And,
went and made a group right there. I was like, I'll turn ninjas into 2023.
yeah. And I love the graphic on that.
Yeah,
I
it's
had fun
awesome.
doing that. But
Nice.
a lot of stuff comes from people that listen to these podcasts. We have a lot of people that watch these podcasts. They might not be able to attend as we're doing it live,
Right.
but they're watching it all over, on Vote Online Academy over on YouTube. They're watching it on the Facebook groups and stuff later.
Yeah.
And we've been getting a hell of a lot of positive feedback on all this.
Yeah. And so that's the whole thing, is we're trying to help the industry as a team, and so I'll have an idea. I'll say, you know what? Let's make one of our graphics an actual motor wiring diagram, or whatever. And then James will be like, all right, let's do it. And then, he'll say, you know what? Do you want to do this next week? All right, let's do it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's all powered. We're powered by listeners. We're powered by viewers. We're powered by our fans. And it's pretty awesome.
Sure. And the one thing is, I've only got about 4,000 illustrations to pull from, text and everything. And that's why we're able to have these presentations and everything we're doing. And, I've had a lot of messages, emails and stuff that just telling us, man, love the way y'all are doing the podcast. Love the presentation. Yeah. Nobody's doing nothing like what y'all are doing. So we really enjoy it. And
Sure.
I appreciate people telling me that because like the presentations you're seeing today, I probably spent about 10 hours on everything. So, it does take me time to do this, and I don't get anything from it. I do it for the industry,
I spent a lot of time on the audio that we forgot to put in this week.
That's my fault. I forgot to do that.
Good.
I'll have it next week.
It's all good. We're going to keep getting better. And I like, we're raising the bar. I know that Mike Holt's doing a new one coming up, and like everyone out there that's like Thomas Dimitrovich, I think it's awesome. He's doing 70B. He's done like 3 of them on 70B, 70E. We've made a new 70E group. It's really awesome that we have these partners. Big shout out to the REBS group, the Residential Electrical Business Group. They always support our stuff, and I really appreciate them. Clay and Lloyd is pretty awesome. NEC Live, it's really awesome that we share that to NEC Dummies every week on Wednesdays at 4:00 on my time. I think it's 6:00 Eastern.
Now,
but that's really awesome.
I will say one thing, depending on the type of change that I see coming up for the 5 changes of the week, that will dictate if I'm going to have a topic of the week, because we could carry on for 45 minutes to an hour on some of these changes. So
yeah, I'm down with that. I'd say
it depends.
I say it should be our topic. That's my opinion.
I love doing topics,
Yeah, I know.
All right, so let's.
I love doing it. So.
Now, in those class 4 circuits, risks are mitigated by limiting exposure times. Now, look at this: short pulses are fast shutoff times, and eliminating repetitive impulses. In addition, now this is the part that matters, they rely on sophisticated monitoring and control systems to mitigate the risk rather than traditional mechanical protection, allowing for cabling systems and inhalations that are more like a class 2 and 3 circuit than power and lighting circuits. Right. Isn't that something? So now you're using a system that monitors and controls that system, which is going to help mitigate that risk.
Yep. And I agree with it.
Now look, I'm still going. I haven't stopped yet. There's more to explain this.
Yep.
Then it says these monitoring and control safety systems involve solid state controls, microprocessors, firmware, and software elements that will require, now look at this, fault analysis, critical software testing, and general function safety evaluations.
Right.
Now,
and you know what when I read that, what I'm thinking of is low voltage circuit breakers.
Yeah, let me point out another point on this. And this is important. How important does this type of system, since it takes and it does all the monitoring and everything, how important is it going to be to make sure you're applying the manufacturer's instructions and NFPA 70B if you have to go there, as far as maintenance of this equipment?
Yep, I agree.
And see, that's what I always tell everybody. It's one thing you're looking at this, but you have to look at it from another point also, because you're dealing with electronics here now.
So this does have a beneficial thing. Like, I don't know if people know this, but I used to work for a company that made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And they would literally, the automation company would say, here's everything you need to do. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they would have a whole list, and that's what you do. You go in there, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool because I could just go in there and just punch in a bunch of things. and go, okay, this is that. I just had to verify. They had a little step thing where I verify this resistance, verifies that, verify this is clear, verify this is not shorted, verify this is this voltage, verify that. And then as long as all those steps are met, it'd fire right up and it'd work.
Okay. Yeah.
Little robot would start running. It was cool.
Now, here's the part. What is a class 4 system? That's what everybody's wanting to know after we got through all of this. It's going to tell you the class 4 power system is a fault managed system that relies on an electronic handshake to verify that the power device is present and operating correctly before greater than class 2 power is applied.
Nice. I like it.
So everybody sort of won't know what it is. It's a fault managed system. And I will tell you, it'll tell you here, faults result in immediate termination of output power. Digital monitoring is not a new concept or unique to these systems to control and mitigate safety risk. There are a number of standards. And somebody asked this, and I was waiting to answer it on digital electricity. It says, of standards that rely on digital monitoring and controls in very critical safety areas, including but not limited to what? Patient care equipment, electronic programmable circuit breakers, and alarm systems.
Yep.
How about that?
That's awesome.
Then it tells you the necessary requirements for functional safety, including mean time between failures of critical components, software reliability, and the like are well known. Oh, now that's interesting, because now what they're telling you, there is quite a bit that can happen here failure wise. So that means that system has to be what? Maintained.
Yep. Not only maintained, but probably cyberly secured.
That's right. And then it tells you, however, the complexity and applications of this technology warrant the development of new installation code requirements.
Nice. I like it.
This sort of proves the point of exactly what a class 4 power system is. And as I said, it's to take care of what? Faults. But you need to make absolutely sure, if you have, especially you're a contractor, if I was putting these in, I'd make sure the company I'm doing it for know that this equipment has to be maintained. That's part of a part of a good maintenance program for a contractor out there.
Yeah, and just big shout out to Thomas Dimitrovich for doing the 70B. I never even went into 70B until Thomas Dimitrovich started bringing it out. So I appreciate him making that to where we could check it out and view it. It's pretty awesome.
And this is the last part of it. It says, unlike class 2 circuits, which place finite limits on sinusoidal AC and DC voltage to reduce the risk of electrical shock, what's a class 4 need to consider at this point? Voltage levels, pulse whips, repetitive pulses, time to shut off, and stored charge from cable capacitance and equipment. This is not something an installer, now this is important, this is not something an installer or an AHG can do in the field. There will have to be a reliance on the safety standards. Well, what's one of the safety standards? NFPA 70E? See, you're going right back to stuff I say. And the listing of what? Equipment.
Hey, if I'm gonna go right back to stuff that you said AHG, but I know you meant I know you meant AHJ. I'm just kidding. I just give you crap, brother.
The authority having giving.
Yeah, I was like, okay, all right. Now everyone's gonna be like, "Your guys' podcast sucks. You use AHG."
I'm going too fast. My mind's going faster out in another direction.
Hey, you have to appreciate me giving you crap before anybody else.
I don't mind it. It never bothers me. But if you look at everything that's there, there's some big changes just right there, just in Article 100 so far in definitions, and I'm sure there are a few more in the next podcast.
I would love to have a request for one of the next ones to be 110.3b, because I have a really good scenario I can put in for that one. and it deals with Thomas Dimitrovich and his Van Duckies. Thomas Dimitrovich is making Van Duckies, and there's a certain manufacturer that makes Van Ducky oil. So
I'm not 100% sure we'll be there next podcast. It may be the next
okay.
one there.
Yeah, whenever. But that's my request is, and shout out to Thomas Dimitrovich. I will use this analogy of your Van Duckies. He's making Van Duckies, and those Van Duckies need a special oil. And we're gonna go use the code reference to see what oil we could use for the Van Duckies.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We ready for tour review?
Heck yeah, I'm always ready. Let
All
me
right.
pop it up for you, brother.
Really appreciate all the people that are part of the Electricians Only tour review and the NIPX Tradesmen. It's really awesome to have a bunch of people. But this is a tool that I used recently. I was doing some work at the Brown Palace Hotel, downtown Denver, and we were hooking up a bunch of equipment. We were putting in a sub panel, and I was able to take this rotation meter. I was able to go to the service panel. I was able to use this in electrically safe work condition where I did not expose any energized parts, and clamp these on. They're not required to be clamped on anything energized. You can clamp them right on the wire, whatever wire. You could take a 20 amp circuit off the wire, 20 amp 3-pole circuit, and clamp it on there and see it's black, red, blue, and you have black, red, blue coming in and see that it's terminated like that. And then you can go, all right, we got clockwise rotation, and then go to another panel and do the same thing. And then you go, oh, we got counterclockwise rotation. So this was really helpful because I was able to determine when we put in the panel that I had to reverse a couple phases when we installed it. So I labeled it. Actually, the project superintendent gave me props on that because he thought that all rotations were the same in this building. It wasn't. So from the switch gear, we were clockwise rotation, to the sub panel I was coming off of was counterclockwise rotation. So that means whoever did the underground coming from the switch gear to that sub panel actually reversed the phases and marked them the same coming out. So I would have never known it without this device. And this is a really handy thing. I recommend every electrician have these. This is nice because you could go look at the motor. You could say it's a clockwise motor. You could go check the rotation on your source. You can remain in electrically safe work condition, which me and James always promote, electrically safe work condition per 70E. And you clamp them on. You clamp plastic pieces onto insulation of wire, and you determine your phase rotation and you connect your motor accordingly. And I really think this is one of the best tools you could have in your toolbox or on your vans. And I would recommend this for any electrician that wants to work in electrically safe work condition and know what you're doing.
Awesome.
I highly recommend it.
Awesome.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
and the whole thing is too, when you go look at the motor termination logo that we created, you can reverse rotation by changing 1, 2, or 3 of the incoming power leads. And I found that out that, some motors are clockwise rotation, some motors are counterclockwise rotation. So
sure.
it's one of those things.
Awesome. It's a good tool. That's all that matters. If it works, it works.
Yeah.
And that's why we do it, to tell you if it's a good tool or not.
Yep, absolutely. And I really appreciate all the people that are checking out our stuff. And I hope we're continuing to, bring you guys good content every week. And I really appreciate you, James, for, bringing it up, bringing the house. And,
Trying.
it's awesome. Dude, your graphics are looking awesome and all this stuff. It would be really awesome if you actually put some audio in for my.
It will be next week. I just have so much going on. I just freaking missed it.
Dude,
But
you and me both, man. I'm working at a hospital now, and shoot, man, it's rough.
I do got 2 shout outs.
All right.
First shout out, one's for me. Hopefully, come Sunday or Monday, the new website will be up,
Nice.
and I'm very stoked about it. It's cool. I mean, I really like it. A lot of interactivity, a lot of videos in there. I mean, we did
Nice.
a lot to this website.
Yeah.
And the second I want to give out to is to that group called NEC for Dummies, topping 11,000, baby.
Boom.
I can't believe that thing has grown that fast, and all the other groups for that matter too. And
Yeah.
that's
It's really awesome. Like, it's a real anomaly that people want to learn electrical, and
sure.
and we're making it easy. So I appreciate all the listeners, and we're pushing 137. This is probably the longest one we've done in a while. So probably
All
better
right.
close it on out.
Well, I got one other thing for the listeners out there. I'm gonna give you a shout out because I'm not gonna stay much after this talking to Bill. I think if I'm not mistaken, the NFL draft is tonight.
Oh yeah.
And it's going, and my rear end's about to get in there. I just drove down and picked up my draft guide because I've been so busy I hadn't even kept up, and I love football. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in there and see who my beloved Cowboys drafted.
All right. Well, go Avalanche, go Broncos, and you can have your go Cowboys.
Hook them.
All right.
Hook them horns too.
All right, brother.
All right,
Awesome.
everybody. Thanks for attending. We'll have you 5
Yep.
more new ones next week. Y'all have
Yeah.
a good week.
Great show. Thank you, guys.